You'll never make it because you're Chinese. That's the best one. I never knew a Chinese person could sing like that. You should change your last name because it's hard to pronounce.
The month of May is Asian Heritage Month, and we're talking to the New York-based and Vancouver-bred May Cheung, an Asian sister and talented jazz-trained folk pop singer-songwriter. In this episode, I'm excited to talk to her about her experiences navigating the Chinese and Western culture as female Asian Canadian musicians and how it feels like to make music as minorities in North America. I am just such a big fan of your music and of you as a person. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience from two angles. First, how it was navigating your own family and Chinese culture. And second, navigating the Western music industry as a minority. So I think that a lot of immigrant families, not just Asians, gravitate towards professions that are more practical, maybe more stable. And there can be a lot of expectations to be dutiful and successful. So I'm curious to know how it's been like for you.
Um, I've been super, super, super lucky that my parents were very supportive from quite a young age, but because I wasn't good at school, like
Neither
my
was
like my academics were just, I didn't care about anything else but music. And I mean, they they drove me to rehearsals, they drove me to piano lessons and stuff like that. And but I funnily enough, I think I put a lot more pressure on myself. um like my dad has actually been faced with those questions, like, why would you let your daughter study music? And his answer would be, why not? And I feel very lucky. Now, not to say that like we have a very rosy relationship. There's always been some form of like a power struggle. So just because he let me study music doesn't mean that that doesn't come with a bag of expectations. There's a ton of expectations. Um, you know, um, Financial expectations. And so I think that um, because of, I guess, the route that I've chosen, I went to school at McGill for jazz. Um, I was probably one out of, I don't know how many Asians in the 4 years that I studied there. Maybe one out of five in the jazz program, maybe six. I don't quite remember. There weren't too many of us, and if there were, they were international students. Um, I honestly didn't expect to get in at all, but I proved myself wrong. I guess it's that sort of like modesty type thing, like, I'm gonna try for this, but I don't deserve it, or like I don't think I'm gonna get in. Like, I don't think I deserve that, type of attitude. And that's that Asian type of attitude where I don't deserve it. And that is such a huge difference than some of our Western counterparts who think I do deserve this. And that's such a different attitude. And this is just from like my observations over maybe 20 years. I've been performing for a very long time. But going back to expectations, the expectations are very subtle. Like, even if your parents say, one thing or another, like it might be just like kind of underhandedly, like a underhanded comment or something like that. Um, there was never a mention of like you should have studied this or you should have studied that. In fact, I told my dad I wanted to maybe pursue another career in coding, like programming or something like that. And then he was like, "You're not gonna sing?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm probably gonna keep singing, but it's because I guess he invested a lot of energy and time into like making sure that I would be doing something, making something out of myself.
Right.
Um, so again, I have to stress that even though, yes, I was permitted to study music, there were a bunch of expectations that came along with it.
I totally, totally understand where you're coming from. My own parents have been really supportive of my choices, even when some people in the community haven't been. So I'm really, really lucky as well that they recognize that that was my calling. But I know that for a lot of Asian creatives out there whose families don't necessarily understand what they're doing, the pressure can be quite suffocating. And I've had a lot of conversations with Asian artists who have been torn between their passion and their duty to their family. And this is also a pretty big aspect of the Asian culture, which I also love because there's a lot of deep respect for our elders and for our family. But on the flip side, the the pressure to honor our family's wishes and to excel in a very like materialistic, result oriented way can can make it an even bigger struggle.
I feel like the biggest difference, you can say the same about Jewish parents, right? Like the mom would be like, my husband is half Jewish, so
Right.
but they're cool. They're very, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I'm just saying, like I've been privy to the culture, like what are you doing with your life? Like all that. I mean, all parents want their kids to do well. That's like it's a given. But I think the biggest difference is that you can mean well for your children, but when your children are minorities and they look different in a white culture that they're trying to assimilate into and make money and profit from their creativity, their creative endeavors and their passion and their career, it's such a different thing because of the way that um, the way society treats A, musicians, and B, females, and C, female musicians. Like
Right.
it just tapers down into this very niche thing when you take it when you take a look at society as a whole and where we fit in that society. Um, and those opportunities are frankly limited. Um, but it doesn't stop us. I think we just keep doing it because like we've had to train ourselves to think that we deserve this. Where
Yeah.
this sort of like thinking from I don't deserve this or it whatever doubts we have. I mean, to I do deserve this, and I see this. I see myself on the same playing field as my Western colleagues.
Yeah, it's so challenging to deal with the misconceptions and the double standards, not just as a woman, but also as a minority. And I'm sure it takes up a lot of mental space um, that makes you doubt your own abilities, even if you know that you have them. So, years ago, when I was living in Southeast Asia, I told my mentors who were all working with major labels at that time that I wanted to move back to Canada and continue making music here because, you know, I'm Canadian and Canada is my home. And every single one of them actually told me that it was a bad idea because not only were the standards different here, but that color still matters. And that really stuck with me because I realized that over the years, um, people might not be overtly racist. Maybe their choices are even subconscious, um, and their comments could come out of just ignorance. But because people in the industry are not used to seeing Asians in this role, um, the access to the same opportunities are much harder. So, yeah, that's why a lot of Asian artists choose to go back to Asia to pursue a career there. And then once they become famous, they might use that as leverage and then pursue a career in North America. So I'm just wondering what your experience has been like as an artist making music in a Western market, especially since there aren't a lot of Asians in your specific genre.
So it's kind of, I'm just telling my age here, but uh, after I turned 30, my dad approached me and he was like, "What are you doing with your life? Like, what are you doing in New York? What are you doing in New York? Like, are you working? Like, what's going on?" And so he had a friend in China who was a public figure, and he had connections to uh, basically a bunch of one of the main songwriters for I don't remember what it's called, but basically a governmental worker for anything music related. He was in charge of. So if there was like a huge like Chinese New Year festival and broadcast, like he'd be in charge of writing the music, and he'd have like a few people writing for him. And so my dad gave me this offer. He's like, "Do you want to go to China?" And I have a friend who owes me a couple favors. Do you want to go check it out and see what it's like, because they could give you a really good offer. So I took the offer, and I went to this government building. It was this sort of like a radio station. It looked kind of abandoned,
Right.
but you go up to like the top floor. It's freezing. There's no heat. There's no such thing as heat. And there's like a few studios, and then like there's these writers that live there for free, but in return for their living, they write all the time. They just they run errands, they write the music. They each have like a little um, station, their little desk and computer where they just yeah put music out. Um, and the main guy asked me, "Can I hear your music?" And at the time, I hadn't released any music yet, but the music was being mastered. I think it was being mastered, and I had like a SoundCloud already set up. And of course, in China, you can't access anything from North America. You got to go through a VPN and everything. And it was kind of an ordeal to go into SoundCloud through the internet.
Mhm.
Finally, they got through. They heard the music. There was like a crowd of like maybe 5 men around me, and they were listening to it, and they just didn't know what to make of it. And they said, "The music is super good. It's really, really good, except it's too sophisticated for what we do here." And it kind of blew me away, because like I have an education in jazz, and like I studied for years, and then I only to find out that like obviously pop music it can be deduced to like one or two chords or whatever, or even
Right.
one. so my dad offered to like, hey, if you want to take this offer, like I'll support you and you can stay with these people in Beijing. And I said no. And he was like really hurt by that, but I just couldn't do that. Like there was no way that I was going to move to a foreign country where I knew nobody and live with these people. And my dad was just trying to convince me like, you could be singing in front of a billion people, and I just had to turn it down because it just was like every particle in my body was like no. And much to my father's chagrin, it just didn't work out. But I don't regret that because now flying back to New York, it gave me a deeper purpose and a deeper reason to continue pursuing what I think I should be doing, that which is songwriting and representation. And that's what it came down to, was like, you know what? Maybe in my lifetime, I might not be so-called successful or like making any money from my music. But if I can reach certain people and like just have my music out there and be the face for an aspiring Asian female singer-songwriter or someone who identifies as female, um, to pursue their dreams, then I think that's the biggest legacy that I could leave behind. And in which case it wouldn't be about me. It would be about the future.
Yeah, I totally get that. When I was in Asia, I was told I could be a star um, if I just changed my style, um, my genre, my language. So basically, just be someone else. That's basically what it was, be someone else. Um, but it would still be a really huge challenge for me because I don't speak Mandarin. I can barely even speak Cantonese. I'm barely even fluent in Cantonese. Um, so yeah, it would be a huge change for me.
Yeah, I'm not fluent in Mandarin at all. I can speak Cantonese, but not Mandarin, and that would be the language that I
Yeah.
would have to learn.
But all this to say that it would be a really huge compromise, which I felt would sacrifice my authenticity and my art, which I fully understand it's a very artist thing to say. Um, but more importantly, what you say is true. There needs to be more representation so that Asian artists, especially the ones that were born and raised in North America and call North America home, don't have to leave their home to make a career or to get access to the same opportunities.
Absolutely. And I mean, I try to really think about the people before me, like who has done something similar. And I can name some people. I can name maybe like two.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
One of them is Vienna Tang, and another is oh my goodness, I'm forgetting her name, but she got super famous in in New Zealand. She's from New Zealand, and she's got Chinese roots and Mauryan roots. Um, and she got signed to Sony at 19 years old, and this was like eons ago. This was early 90s. She got signed and became a huge, very famous Asian singer singing in English, like
Yeah.
pop music. So we do exist. It's just we're once every other decade.
Every
Once a
other
decade.
decade.
Yeah, yeah, once a decade. Just one of us. Um, and we hope, now we hope there's going to be three, four, five, six, exponentially just get that ball rolling, because representation is lacking, and part of it is expectations. And you know, um, yeah, do it for the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're looking at it from a purely business point of view, it is easier to sell a product that you know how to market, that fits in all the right boxes, that looks like the music that they're making, because you already have and know the audience for that. In terms of representation, I think that film is moving faster than the music industry right now. In classical, you might see more Asians, but not so much in folk or neo soul. And right now, all the artists that come to mind, that you know blogs say are Asian, um, are they look racially ambiguous or don't even look Asian. Some artists that come to mind are her, Bruno Mars, Anderson Paak, Jacob Collier. Um, all of them have Asian blood, and I am not taking that away from them at all. But I struggle to name someone that is fully and noticeably Asian. So,
Yeah, Mitski herself even even said there needs to be more full Asians represented in the music industry. She herself is half. There's a lot of half Asians that I feel kind of, they. I feel like that there are more half Asians that are represented in
right.
the mainstream music,
Yeah.
pop, and yeah. And so, I mean, that again, not to take away from their Asian heritage. I mean, Olivia Munn, when you take a look at her Instagram, it's like proud American Asian. Like that's the first thing you see. That's her description. And you're like, yeah, girl, that's awesome. That's great. And if that is what it takes for people to kind of slowly assimilate and slowly accept that there are Asians in mainstream media, then so be it. I am totally down with that.
Mhm.
But when Mitski says something like, "Yeah, we need more full Asians," that just hammers it home. That's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what I've been working on. Hi.
Yes. I've been making music for a while now, and um, there's a comment that comes up a lot, and it's that um, if I close my eyes, I wouldn't have known that you were Asian. So if I close my eyes and listen to you sing, I wouldn't have known that you were Asian. And while I know that that was meant to be a compliment, or the people saying it were not really trying to be racist, but hearing it from so many different people made me really self conscious about my ethnicity. And I think that even in Asian communities, we tend to look to the West and follow whatever's trending, whether it's in entertainment or it's in beauty standards, um, whatever, whether we know it or not. And so at times I find myself wondering if I'll lose opportunities if I bring more attention to my heritage and to my ethnicity instead of just allowing people to think whatever they want to or to assume whatever they want to.
Absolutely. Um, I think it's so many combinations of how society shapes expectations of you. And I suffer from the same disease of downplaying my Asian heritage. I'm like 85% fluent in Cantonese. Um, I absolutely love kung fu movies. There's so many things that I really love about our culture and the sort of depth that comes with it. And I think that part of our mental health, there's like a compartment in our brain where we censor that and suppress our Asian expression for the same reason you said, for the exact reason you said about being just not just feeling like you might lose opportunities. It's very prevalent, and actually it's so funny. Again, we're coming back to Mitski because there are I think it was some Asian, was it Canadian? It was a Canadian article about rising Asian artists. They showcased three of them. I don't remember their names, but one of them was a male singer-songwriter, and he says that he doesn't really want to write about the Asian experience, whereas Mitski, who is half Asian, like that's all she just divulges all of those sentiments and all those feelings about being an Asian woman and how we are treated sometimes by lovers or just the Asian experience. And here's a guy who would rather not sing about that stuff, and it's a personal artistic choice. And same for me too. Like it's something that is kind of scary territory to go into because you think that people might not accept you. And I think it would be in my favor for the sake of my mental health to get into that. As scary as that territory can be, maybe I should write about that experience. I already see a lot of Asian girls killing on instruments, guitar, piano, whatever it is. I already see it. It's happening.
Mm.
But like you said, like we're all saying is just we're not aggressive about it, right? Like I feel like I feel like at least in America, in the States, there's not a lot of Asians compared to blacks or whites, and we are truly a minority, and so and African Americans having that history, it's as tragic and devastating as it was. It really, you see them pushing at the forefront of the entertainment industry, like because they are undeniably talented and they're innovative and they've shaped American music, and then here we are, Asians, creatives, and not having had any forefathers or generations before us who have done this.
I also realize that it's really important for the support to come from our own community too. But it's challenging. It's challenging because Asia is a really big place. There are a lot of countries grouped under Asia, and um, you know, with all of these countries have very different cultures, histories, experiences, languages. So even communicating with each other can be challenging. But I know that the community is growing, and so is that support. Like what we're doing right now, talking with you, just so that we can share our experiences and feel less alone pursuing the creative life.
I've been feeling pretty solo for a very, very long time, like a lonesome wolf, the one token Asian who writes, who slings the guitar every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we definitely should support each other. We should definitely be there for each other. It's more than just the mechanics of being a musician. There's like the mental health aspect, there's the emotional aspect, there's the financial aspect. There's just like it's just multiple layers. So I think we're on a good footing if we are doing this right now. So thanks again for having me. It truly was great.
I've had such a deep and wonderful chat with you today about navigating our own culture, our community, and where we see ourselves in the music industry. And before I let you go, I wonder if there is anything else that you wanted to share that we haven't touched on.
I think we touched upon a lot of great aspects. But I think at the end of the day, we should just keep doing what we do, regardless of whatever neuroses we have, whatever expectations people have from us. I think living a life as a creative in many aspects is a luxury. Just in general, like there's a lot of people that feel like they, regardless of race, they just feel like they can't do or shouldn't do what they are doing, which is probably financially driven and money motivated, but for a good reason, you know. But yeah, I think that would be my sort of 2 cents is just keep going. I think for everyone in general who's doing anything creative.
Mental health break. Break, 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 break.
I try to meditate as much as I can. It really, really helps. I think isolation has finally has reared its ugly head
Oh, yes.
towards, my existence and many, many, many other people, millions of people's existence. But the good news is that my anxiety has lessened because I'm not hustling in New York. I'm not running from one place to the next, trying to get to different clients. But that's not to say that I don't get any anxiety attacks. I still do from time to time. And when I do this exercise where I draw a square, and feel free to do this with me. You're gonna draw a square, and the first 3 faces of the square, you're gonna inhale, and the very last one, you're gonna exhale. So, yeah, here we go. So 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I feel better already.
That's just like a technique they use for any kid that's like wigging out. Like, do the square. You square now.